Hey, welcome back, brothers and sisters. There's some things and some people that for some reason I just never get tired of talking about, and the Dogon tribe are on that list. Now, the Dogon are a very interesting tribe. For those of you who don't know who the Dogon are by now, before we get real deep in the rabbit hole and learn what the Dogon say about the cosmos and about the human being, we're going to take the first portion of this video to understand a little bit about the Dogon culture and who they are as a people, because that's important before diving deep into their spiritual practices. Of course, you would have to know a little bit about the culture before understanding the symbolism. One of the reasons that we want to talk about the Dogon tribe is because for many, many years, the Dogon tribe has baffled scientists with their vast knowledge of the cosmos. But what exactly did the Dogon say about the cosmos? We'll get deep into that, as well as explain to you why most of us were never taught about this profound tribe of people and how their teachings relate to us all. But as I said before we get into that, let's learn a little bit about who the Dogon tribe actually are. The Dogon are an ethnic group living in the Central Plateau region of Mali in West Africa, south of the Niger Bend, near the city of Bandiagara in the Mopti region. The population numbers between 400,000 and 800,000. They speak the Dogon languages, which are considered to constitute an independent branch of the Niger/Congo language family. The Dogon are best known for their religious traditions, their mask dances, wooden sculpture, and their architecture. The past century has significant changes in the social organization, material culture, and beliefs of the Dogon, partly because Dogon country is one of Mali's major tourist attractions. So in a nutshell, you could say that the Dogon are currently being quote-unquote westernized, for lack of better words. Most of who we call the Dogon of today combine several groups of diverse origin who migrated to escape Islamization. So there's a lot of things to understand about Dogon art, spirituality, and symbolism. So before getting deep into that, let's just first understand that Dogon art is primarily sculpture. Dogon art evolves around religious values, ideals, and freedoms. Dogon sculptures are not made to be seen publicly and are commonly hidden from the public eye within the house of families, sanctuaries, or kept within the Ogon. The importance of secrecy is due to the symbolic meaning behind the pieces and the process by which they are made. Themes found throughout Dogon sculpture consist of figures with raised arms, superimposed bearded figures, horsemen, women with children, figures covering their faces, women bearing vessels on their heads, musicians, dogs, figures bending from the waist, mirror images, and standing figures. So in other words, the Dogon has a wide variety of figures, and all of them are different symbols that mean the same thing, but different aspects of the total meaning. In other words, the Dogon don't have textbooks like we have. They use figurines and symbols the same way we use symbols in the Western world to deal with science. Everything has a chemical makeup, a cosmic fingerprint, and a certain vibration which can be translated into a symbol. So even though us humans speak many, many different languages that may seem to serve as barriers, one thing that has always connected us was the symbols. The symbols transcend the languages because the human mind have always created a symbol for everything with a vibration. And no matter what your language may call a particular thing, I may not understand your language, but all of the symbols are remarkably similar around the entire earth. And that is one thing that also have baffled scientists, because we're talking about pre-dynastic symbols that dominated the old world during a time where it was said that people was primitive and on a Flintstone type level of technology. And one of the biggest questions is, how were they all synced? How were they all on the same page during a time where scientists say that they were too primitive to even know how to develop boats? What we're finding out is that we can find very, very advanced societies going back to the beginning of human origins. And this truth has been hidden from us behind theories of evolution and Darwinism. And the reason we want to talk about the Dogon is because they're one of the last tribes to still be passing down pre-dynastic spiritual beliefs and cosmological systems orally. Now that we understand how profound the teachings of the Dogon are, question number one is, who taught the Dogon tribe everything they know? And who prevented each and every last one of us from knowing this very profound mystery about life and the cosmos, where there's a lot of deception we got to reveal? So let's start at question number one. Who taught the Dogon everything they know? Well, signs of other contacts and origins are evident in Dogon art, and the Dogon people were not the first inhabitants of the cliffs of Bandiagara. Influence from Telem art is evident in Dogon art because of its rectilinear designs. So then, who were the Telem tribe? This is where it gets interesting. So what we know about the Dogon tribe and their ancestors, the Telem tribe, is that the Telem tribe were the people who inhabited the Bandiagara escarpment in Mali between the 11th and 16th centuries. The Dogon people migrated to the escarpment region around the 14th century. Now, the Telem people were pygmies. They would be who we're calling the pygmies today, or small red people. And they built dwellings around the base of the escarpment as well as directly into the cliff face. Many of these structures are still visible in the area. And many of these prehistoric pygmy buildings are still in use by the Dogon to this day. So we're talking about people who got direct knowledge of the cosmos from the pygmies. And if you don't know who the pygmies are, this is one of the most revered tribes on the earth and one of the most remote tribes. And people who we're calling midgets today, or dwarf people, would have been an ancient group of people who we're calling pygmies, but we know that they came in various what we would call races today. But the ancients didn't have a concept of races until after dynastic times. So the pygmies, you can see depictions of them in things like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. These seven dwarfs were called the seven Midges, and the word Midge is how we get the word midget. But in Norse cosmology, these seven Midges are actually the seven microcosmic building blocks of creation. It's why the biblical account of creation uses the number seven so much, and why the number seven is the number of completion when it comes to creation. So who we're calling dwarfs today can also be seen in spiritual mythologies as well. So we know that many accept the idea that the pygmies are one of the oldest tribes of human on the earth. Dwarfs, people who we're calling midgets today, is not a defect. So throughout mythology, there have been many written mythologies and accounts of the pygmies being a human tribe that bestowed all of the secrets of our reality upon the other tribes. Today, they like to say that all of our knowledge descended from the sky, from aliens and different things like this, where you have, aliens building the pyramids because, according to history, we were too dumb to understand architecture during the time the pyramids were built. So we have to have all of these other bizarre theories to explain where did humans get all of this excellent technology from, even as far back as 100,000 of years. This shouldn't be, according to science. When you consider the fact that when we talk to the oldest tribes on the earth, they know everything that the Western world and the so-called modern technology tribes know. When we talk to the oldest tribes on earth that's supposed to be so primitive and limited in their understanding because they lack so much technology, scientists seem to act baffled that they often know more than us with our big space programs and expensive equipment. We're talking about tribes that are hundreds of thousands of years old and they haven't changed their oral traditions. And when you listen to these traditions, a lot of scientists would like you to write them off as silly mythologies. But when you understand that the ancients spoke their science in a spiritual, mythological way, in a symbolic way, then we receive profound revelations when we decipher these creation stories, in which we will do here in a minute. When they talk about humans receiving some type of divine knowledge at some point to evolve our understanding of our environment and the world around us, that divine knowledge did not come from any visitors from space or any bizarre mythological creatures. It was us humans that taught one another. And according to all of the ancients who we're calling midgets today, or dwarf people, they were the teachers of humanity. And they revealed a lot of things about our reality. A lot of the pygmy tribes were cave dwellers. So they talk about a lot of times that we come from cavemen. We evolved from cave dwellers. And a lot of the caves you're not able to access today. So there's a lot of excavation sites that are quite a task for these scientists and researchers based upon their inaccessibility. A lot of tunnel systems that are designed for dwarf people. They had built certain cave systems and different things of that nature. They understood the inner workings of the earth. Our pygmies, brothers and sisters, was said to predate the rest of us. But I would argue that, me personally, I think that everything we see was created simultaneously, but I digress. I want to stay on subject here. So far, we understand that most of what the Dogon know, in fact, most of what the world know, come from the Pygmies, and that the Dogon are one of the tribes amongst us original human nations that still carry these spiritual practices. How did it miss us in America and most of the nations that's under world religious spells? How did it miss us, and why is it important? First, let's understand more about the Pygmies and the Dogon. Again, most of our scientists teach us that at some point humans receive a vast amount of knowledge, but there's mysteries on where the knowledge come from. Most of the time we get stories that have us looking up in the sky. And scientists teach us all the time that any race of species that visit the earth from so-called outer space will be more advanced than us. And this is a seed they want in your mind so that you can subconsciously accept the idea that this boost in knowledge, this shift in consciousness that took place on the earth at some point comes from something far away from earth. Well, it's been right under our noses the whole time, according to the ancients. The Pygmies had deciphered so much about the earth over so many years. You can see deities of the Pygmies in every culture. In Egyptian, you have the god Bes. One of the folklore creatures in the Western world is the leprechaun. We know that the leprechaun is a Riddler type deity who understands a lot of secrets that the normal human don't. And he also cut deals with humans to reveal them certain knowledge, basically the mysteries. The leprechaun is another deity that symbolized the pygmy and their vast knowledge of the spirit realm. We must understand that the pygmies were very cautious with who they shared their knowledge with and how they disseminated the information, just as we read about the Dogon previously. Because we know that knowledge in the wrong hands will give the wrong people power. And that will lead up into how the world gets so powerless today. because knowledge did end up in the wrong hands, and we'll get into that great deception later. But we're still understanding a little bit about the Dogon and the Pygmies here. When the Pygmy people started giving the rest of us humans their advanced knowledge, at some point we corrupted this earth before we can even get it all, which led to most of these tribes like the Dogon and the Pygmy going into years of seclusion from the rest of the masses for many years. See, in the beginning, everything was unified and there was no separation. We all lived in harmony and shared the knowledge tribe to tribe. We know that whenever you have different groups of people, there are going to be trade systems that's going to be established inevitably. When we're trading physical goods, we also trade languages, spiritual practices, information, knowledge, secrets. And this was what was going on in the beginning. We know that knowledge is power. And again, some of the people who held most of the knowledge and secrets of the earth secluded themselves from the new world. So what we find is a lot of quote unquote anthropologists and different scientists traveling into the jungle to talk to these what they call primitive people and ask them so much about the cosmos. And you should find that strange that with all of our advanced technology and so-called satellites in space, scientists to this day still take trips to get most of their understanding about our cosmos from primitive people. At least they teach us that these are primitive people. Well, what's really going on? Well, now let's get into a little bit of the Western world deception, how we were separated from our Dogon brothers and sisters and how we were separated from the ancient world to create this new world. And basically the difference between the old world and the new world is your understanding of this reality and the cosmos, your understanding of the world around you. Most of us get our understanding from deceivers if we were born in the Western world. So today, I will teach you what our ancestors has been teaching for hundreds of thousands of years. But first, I will explain to you how we missed the mark. It's very strange that with all the millions of dollars that go into our science programs and so-called space programs, one of the biggest budgets for most of your scientists is simply touring the world, speaking to people who they are teaching us are primitive people. And most of what we learn about the cosmos is a plagiarization of what those scientists learn from those primitive tribes when they go into the jungle. You see, these scientists serve as a barrier between us and the code of nature, us and the oldest remnants of our human origins and construct of the cosmos. By the time we get the information, it's watered down, it's changed, it's altered to hide what these tribes really want us to know, because if we knew it, we would understand how magical this earth is and how far we've gone to create what we call this new world. So most of the tribes that knew most about the earth and the human in the spiritual realm secluded themselves from most of the world today during what many call the fall of consciousness. This was during the time when man's science and technology was achieving heights and man was awakening in his awareness about how things work around him and his science. And there was this boost of knowledge and information that came onto the earth all of a sudden. And what we find at the same time man was becoming enlightened, it coincided with a great fall to create today what we call the New World Order and nations, world nations and government. So you can sum up this entire story like this. There was a time on earth when there was a great, great awakening for the minds of humanity. And a lot of that awakening, like I said, can be attributed to the Pygmies. Nature intended for us to share our information. And what we call the advancement of man is nothing more than the meeting of different tribes and cultures, advancing their understanding simply by extending it with the knowledge and information of other cultures that they meet. So we learn something about ourselves every time we learn something about each other. And in the beginning, when the world was quite a very different setting than it is today, there was a lot of trade, a lot of spiritual systems that we see in the jungle were commonplace during those times. And we can't quite understand what's going on in the minds of some of these tribesmen. Why do they do the dances they do? Why do they wear the masks? We're going to get deep into that. But we must understand that the world governments created a new world by secluding us from the knowledge of the old world. And the Pygmies is one of the oldest tribes on the earth that's still living in the jungle with all of the knowledge of the old world. And yes, they are a dwarf tribe of people. And the fact that they seclude themselves from the new world and that they would die and fight to the death before allowing the new world to come into their place shows that there's something quite different that they see about us. But what is it? What the Pygmies and a lot of more old tribes who still living in the old world in the jungle, what they're trying to do is preserve their spiritual practices. They know that when you come in contact with the new world, over many years, you lose your spiritual beliefs and all of your records and oral traditions. The new language of the new world will rob the future generations of their understanding of their ancestral symbols and mysteries of the cosmos. And this is how you create a slave from the inside out. You know it starts from the spirit first. So it starts in your music, symbols, and spiritual practices. That's why the Western world takes so many trips to these tribes and come back over here to explain to us and interpret to us cosmic mysteries from these people. Of all things that they can teach us about, they travel the world to talk to so-called primitive people about the mysteries of the stars and the cosmos. Why? Something we should know, and we should actually be teaching them with all of our great technology, right? All of our technology, when you do research, you find out that it's all a farce, and that all of the secrets of the cosmos still and always have come from the ancients, people who we call primitive today. So one of the greatest mysteries and one of the greatest problems we face in today's generations is finding out our true origins. We live in a generation of people giving blood to draw blood tests to find out who they are. But the ancients didn't do blood tests. They knew who they were. They didn't have to draw blood to find out who they were. We ask all the time, where did humanity come from? Well, scientists would have us to believe that we all originated in Africa. Now, the out of Africa theory have been debunked and proven to be false. That's why it's a theory and not a fact. But what I will say is that a lot of the tribes we see in Africa today, a lot of the old tribes like the Dogon, most of them agree that all of us are descendants of great ancestors. Now, who those ancestors were is the problems many of us face. So what we've accepted is that our ancestors come from Africa. So we can just go with that. And what I'm going to do, whether you accept that or not, the point that I want to make is that when you go to Africa and ask the oldest African tribes where they come from, they say lands in the north. And scientists have told us that these lands in the north are mysterious lands, mythological places, and even have said that the lands in the north that they're talking about are places like Ethiopia and places that will be considered north of Egypt, basically. Well, there's a lot of problems with these claims. For example, the Dogon tribe say that they originated from the Pygmy tribe, in particular the Pygmy tribe. What we're doing now is we're tracing the bloodline of the Dogon back, and they keep a record of all their history with oral traditions. And they said that they come from the Pygmy. And the Pygmy, just like the Dogon, keep their records with oral tradition. These tribes don't draw blood and have someone go in the computer to tell them who they are. They've always been told for generation to generation their origins. And our origins lie in the stories of these tribes, not in our lying scientists that's ruling over us. So when you go and ask the Pygmy tribe where did they originate, they say from the lands in the north. What are the lands in the north that the Pygmy tribe and all of these other great tribes speak of? What are these lands in the north that our oldest of oldest ancestors said they originate from? Well, the map in front of you show you these lands in the north that all of the ancients said not only our oldest of oldest ancestors originate from, but this would be the birthplace of humanity. Now, the map you looking at, a lot of us are not familiar with it, but this map, what it does is it proves that the Pygmy and the Dogon are not some foolish tribesmen making things up out the side of their neck. These lands in the north have been argued about for so many years because we've been using the wrong maps to find these lands. We got to realize that the further back we go in time, the maps change. And that ought to raise questions as well, because the further back we go in time, we know that the ancestors were all flat earthers. And they had maps based upon their flat earth cosmologies, and they was able to get around this flat plane just fine. Now, you got to ask yourself, would the ancestors be able to get around just fine if they thought that the earth was flat and they were basing their maps off of that? Don't seem like people who thought the earth was flat would be able to make accurate maps, yet they did. So either the earth is flat or these ancient maps we looking at are just mythological fairy tales that's laughable. And that's what we've been taught, not to take these ancient maps serious. If you look at today's world, when pilots fly, they use flat maps. Now, we're taught that we live on a globe, but if Earth were truly the shape of a sphere, then we should be able to use a globe to get around the Earth. And that globe would also be able to tell us when we're flying how much we should dip the nose down to account for the curvature. So this globe would be very vital for flight if we actually lived on one, because it would be a miniature representation to get you from point A to point B. You got to account for the curvature while you're in flight. You got to account for the 1,000 miles per hour spin. All of that would need to be accounted for, yet none of it is accounted for, and pilots use flat maps, and the globe is on the souvenir section. That ought to tell you a lot, people. Globes were never meant for educational purposes. In fact, they're not even meant for navigational purposes, so they must be only meant for brainwashing purposes. You see, the globe is a result of balling up the original ancient maps. We got to understand the importance of maps in ancient day. Maps could get you in ancient day. Maps were more valuable than treasure because without the map, you didn't find the treasure. So the man with the accurate map was a very wise and wealthy man because of his understanding of his environment and where things were around him. There were a lot of maps that was burned because they showed so many places that they don't want us to know about today. Some of those maps have resurfaced to show lands that we never thought existed. And we got to ask ourselves, do we really live on a globe, or were these great ancient tribes telling us the truth about our reality and that we're on an extended plane? When we look at maps like the one in front of you, we shouldn't just throw it off as something stupid or laughable stuff, because we got to realize these maps were in existence and in active use, and no one laughed at those 4 continents and said, hey guys, these are fairy tale places. No, there are many maps that we laugh at today, but that the ancients took very serious, and they went to places that we would consider off map today, because we've been given a globe, and the globe hide all of the land that the ancients knew about. These are forbidden places today, and we've been confined to one section. And what confines us here is our own belief in the globe, which is a balled up map, and it was balled up to hide more land. There's even other maps like this one that show land surrounding us, and these continents can go out as far as, hey man, who knows how far out they can go. According to the ancestors, there's no recorded ends to the earth, and you just keep going and going into new continents. We may be living in a Truman Show, and I think we are. They got everybody believing in the globe, stuck and confined to these 7 little continents. But the ancients talked about lands that we laugh at today. We call most of them mythological places, but question, who would go through the painstaking trouble of making these intricate maps for mythological places that don't really exist? I mean, think of this. Look at these maps. You see the regular continents, Africa, America, you see those familiar shapes, but you also see other strange continents surrounding us with weird shapes. Who would go through the trouble of drawing these intricate and unique shapes if they didn't know what they was talking about? I mean, these had to be actual places. Who does that? Who would make a map with everything we know of as Africa, Australia, all of these places, and then just start making up stuff around it? We got to keep in mind that these maps were taken serious for centuries, and that the ancients must have been going to some of these lands that we've been convinced don't exist today because we think we live on a globe. Anyway, we must keep in mind that we were taught that Columbus discovered America. We was taught that Columbus went on to discover new worlds, not new continents. And that was because if you look at the map in front of you, during the golden age of exploration, man figured out that the earth was flat. But during this time of conquest and exploration, it was all about the maps. People were killed for maps. And the understanding of the earth and where we are and map making was very important. That's what they was fighting about, land and resources. The powerful men of the world went on conquest to explore new land. And after they explored all of the continents within our world, they went beyond the ice rings to explore new worlds with other continents. A lot of the ancestors went beyond the ring to carry on their lineage on some of these other lands, as well as Columbus. And a lot of these men went on, like we learned about, to explore and discover new worlds. And they used the word world for a reason. After they discovered all of the continents in this first circle, they went beyond the ring to discover new worlds with their own sun and moon systems, just like you see in this map. And those worlds have their own sets of new continents. And this map goes outward. Even Plato talked about our earth this way, as a ripple effect, so to speak. And there's no end. The further out you go, the wider the worlds get. And if you think of the word world, that's simply what these rings are. They're whirls, because each one have a sun and moon. So you can look at that as the word world as WHIRL, because what separate these worlds are the whirling of the sun and moon. Our sun and moon is in our first circle. And when you go to the next whirl, they have a sun and moon whirling above their head or twirling above their head. And when you go to the next whirl, that's exactly what it is, a whirling of the sun and moon, creating a different night and day that's longer and longer the further out you go. What separates the worlds is simply the sun and moon. Each one have their own whirling of the sun and moon. So this began to make sense, and the ancients start to look like people who knew what they were talking about, and we start to look more and more like deceived descendants. So these lands in the north that was spoken of by many, many ancestors, they said that humanity originated from the lands in the north. Again, you're looking right at them on this map. These are the 4 continents. These are the first continents that were created from the point of singularity. And the Creator started building outward and outward. Our earth is like a vinyl record, and each song is a different world or a different tune, vibration. And what's spinning the record is the pole at the center of the earth. All of the sun and moons across this plane are attached to that pole, and as it spins, it creates time across this infinite plane. And for the worlds that's closer to the pole, their night and day is quicker than the worlds further away from the pole. Concepts like what I'm telling you now We can see them when you look at a barber's pole. Red and blue is sun and moon. The white in the middle represents that point right in between them being a pole that's spinning them both around. In a lot of ancient creation stories, they speak of the North Pole as a witch stirring up a brew pot. And this is what creates the circuit of the sun and moons for all of the worlds across the plane, starting with Eden and then coming to us and then the worlds outward, just like we see in these maps, just like we see in this map. And we see again the inhabitants of the Pygmy. This map shows you where the Pygmies said they originated from. And there's another continent where giants originated from. And then you have these other continents where like animals and insect creatures are said to originate from. Basically everything starting from the center and spreading the seed of itself evenly outward from the center in a perfect 360. And that's how you get concepts today like the Big Bang, where all these worlds and life was seeded from one point of singularity. But this is the science of the ancestors misinterpreted today to deceive you. The Pygmy knew exactly where they come from, and these tribes are isolated from the world today. And I believe that they still go to their homeland, and that it's us who forgot to take the trip back to the homeland. The true motherland is Eden. It really exists. All compasses point us home, guys. All compasses point to the north. And it's those northern lands that all of the ancients spoke of that everything started from. Now they want to point us to Africa to hide our true motherland. Scientists are pointing you to Africa, but the compasses are pointing you to a divine energy at the center of the earth. Now, when you think about a compass, it wouldn't even work on a globe. There's only one pole, and that's the North Pole. If you had a globe, then compasses would point magnetic south when you go below the equator. That has never happened. All compasses point toward the center where the tree of life resides. That's our true home. And I believe that we took journeys back to our true home and that those lands are special places. And the only thing that's stopping us from going there today is our belief in a globe. You don't know that there's so much more to the earth that was spoken of by the Dogon, the Pygmies, and many others. What I'm going to prove in this series is that the Dogon, the Pygmies, and the ancestors have always and will always be flat earthers. And why the flat earth is important to us. We may be serving as a slave race for other continents. It's very well possible that we live on an infinite plane and that the controllers of this world have went on to colonize different sections of this plane simply by brainwashing the people and over time making the future generations believe in the globe. In their mind, there is nothing else but a little blue ball and 7 continents. But what if we were on an infinite plane and the only thing stopping us from traveling across this infinite plane, meeting up with our ancestors and going back to our true homeland is our belief in a globe? If there are lands that we don't know about, like the ancestors said, who's to say that there aren't powerful men with their own civilizations using us as a slave race? Who's to say that there are not continents out there where they have streets of gold and houses of gold? Where are all the resources going on the earth? They tell us we live on a little blue ball and that we're running out of resources. Where are they going? Maybe we're a slave race and all of our labor is serving another race. Maybe there are many places like ours where the people are being taught that they live on a globe, and these are little matrices that are created across the plane. They have military barriers dividing the worlds, and we get movies like The Lord of the Rings where they tell you about these concepts of the government guarding the rings that separate the worlds to keep us from going out and to keep other visitors from coming in. And if you think that's far-fetched, they even trying to build a wall here in America, people, to do the same thing. They don't want us to know where we truly are, and they want to confine you and trap you to a small space. So I think a lot of these tribes that seclude themselves from our world, I think that they still know how to make it back to Eden. They know the secret pathways and different water routes and everything to take. And I do think that a lot of these secretive tribes still take the journey that we don't take today. And that's the big secret that they're keeping from us. Because one thing is for sure, that these tribes know a lot about the mysteries of this earth, and that a lot of the masons and controllers of our world have built relationships with these tribes before us regular people can. So the relationships they built with these tribes have allowed them to say, hey guys, we know these guys and we know what they teaching. And when they say that they're going to interpret to us what these great tribes have to tell us, the mystery of the cosmos, they misinterpret it on purpose. They bend and twist it, and they say, this is what they said about the cosmos. And I'll be getting into that in a minute, how there were a lot of anthropologists given charge of interpreting the teachings of these tribes to us Americans. None of us went over and talked personally to the Pygmies about cosmology or the Dogon. What we know about these tribes come from us through a middleman. And we're going to be discussing those middlemen when we get deep into the deception of how this great knowledge of the cosmos was hidden from us. Again, this map shows you that the Pygmies knew where they was from. They was from those lands in the north. You can see that this map has the inhabitants of the Pygmy. Why would someone just make that as a joke? Why would someone just say, you know what? I want to draw a map of 4 mysterious lands, and I'm going to even write on one of them that the Pygmies was from it. Who plays like that? This was actually a serious map that was taken serious, where people knew this. At some point, the entire earth knew about these 4 lands surrounding the North Pole. Hitler knew about it as well, because these 4 lands are the 4 arms that makes the swastika. These 4 lands are separated by 4 rivers, and each of those rivers flow outward from the center, and they make a circle around those 4 lands in a counterclockwise motion, just like the swastika show. Those rivers, if you can look at them from a top view, the way they flow became the swastika. As the water exits out each of those canals, there's a current pushing it to the left. Each canal, when the water exits, it goes with that current in a counterclockwise position, and it looks like a swastika or a flying ninja star. And the way those rivers flow is also how the sky turns, as above, so below. So the swastika is also a symbol that shows you how any perceived constellation will look over a year's time. For example, in the case of the swastika, it's the observing of the Big Dipper. And the position of this Big Dipper over time shows us how the sky is turning in this clockwise or this counterclockwise circuit. And the waters coming from the center of the earth, from those first 4 continents from the North Pole, is doing the same thing. And that's what's creating the tides. That's what's keeping everything moving, so that everything is constantly recycling and cleansing and being renewed. Even time, you have a new day every day by this circuit. Just like if you were standing up at a river and you filled up a cup of water and poured it out, the next cup of water be a totally different cup of water than the first cup. With each cup of water, it's a different set of microscopic life, a whole different universe in each cup, because the flowing river ain't stagnant. And that's what's creating the renewing energy. And it's all starting from the pole. So the Pygmy knew this secret, the Dogon knew this secret, Hitler knew this secret, and all of the symbols you're looking at right now are just many, many tribes around the earth who knew this secret. It's us today who've been dumbed down, and the mysteries of earth has been hidden from us, and we're just scratching the surface right now. What we're proving right now is that the Dogon tribe don't have an out of Africa theory. The Dogon tribe said they originated from the Pygmy, who said they originated from the North Pole. Now, according to scientists today, you can't inhabit the North Pole. So either those scientists lying or the Pygmies lying. I tell you who got the greater motive to lie. the scientists, not the Pygmy tribe. And there's a reason why these tribes want to be isolated from the world that those scientists are lying to. They know that we're being dumbed down and that the secrets of all of this are being hidden from us. And they wouldn't dare trade their ancestral knowledge and ancient spiritual practice to fit in with this new world that we're in. They rather stay where they at and continue traveling about this earth as they please, and they are free. So these tribes, some of them just vanish over time. We got anthropologists that have gone deep in these jungles just to check on these tribes. They fly over their head. And by the way, when they fly over, the tribes be shooting and boring arrows and stuff. They love their jungle way of living. And a lot of these tribes, they really hate what we've created here. I think a lot of them know that we're actually being dumbed down and that we slaves over here. But anyway, when they check on a lot of these tribes, you know, as an anthropologist, you may take a trip, an overhead flight over some of these remote places. If your plane crash, you're a dead man. They never land. And sometimes a lot of the tribes are friendly and let them start landing. And a lot of these tribes end up being colonized too. It's like soon as they allow the door open, and it start with different gifts like cigarettes. They get the tribes, you know, hooked on some of our stuff. And then it build a little friendship, and over time they teaching them the language. Next thing you know, they like us. They forgot about their cosmology, their ancestral truth, and they're expanding this new world just like that. This the same Christians that went around colonizing the world, indoctrinate them with the Bible, and the same Islamic power that did it to their people with the Quran. And all of these religions are based upon the cosmology. So when you go to the root of it all, you see what they really hiding is flat earth. They're hiding it right in our faces because it's a shame that we have these ancient maps resurfacing and people are just ignoring them. We're starting to find maps and look into ancient maps that was being used. This was something we didn't think to do. Now that we're doing it, a lot of revelations are coming to light. It's the questions. Why would the ancients make these maps and draw in continents that don't really exist? Why play like that? We got to give the ancients more credit, guys. A lot of places we're calling mythological locations today may very well be real lands. Because if I was a map maker, I wouldn't draw in the mythological make-believe places on a map. I would only draw the real ones. And I think the ancestors were smart just like me. Why would they make fairy tale lands on their maps among the real lands? Obviously, they all were real. You guys really need to open your mind, people. There's more to this earth. And the truth about our origins and the mystery of life may be hidden in these questions and in these hidden lands. Someone's got to be wrong. It's either our scientists who say that the North Pole is not inhabitable, who say that we originated from apes in Africa, who fell from space from a Big Bang cataclysm and a cosmic soup. We believe all of these theories. They're not facts. And our scientists are making multi-millions of dollars off our foolish beliefs. And all of the truth is coming from the ancients, who they are calling foolish people. Maybe it's us who the fools for believing the imposters. Because there's no way I'm going to say that the Pygmy are wrong and that the Pygmy people don't know what they're talking about and that the Pygmy people didn't originate from this land in the north that we see on this map. If you say they didn't originate from that land that we see on this map, where did they originate from? They said the land's in the north, and there's so many speculation that people say, well, that's Egypt, well, that's this place, well, that's this place. Well, we can argue which place it is based upon a limited map. But if I gave you the map that the ancients was using when they was passing this oral story around, it'll make more sense. We're using modern maps to locate an ancient place. We got to use the ancient maps to locate these areas. That's how the elite have fooled us, people, because we use our maps to look for ancient lands, and they have deleted them from our maps. We'll never find them. So we start saying, well, hey, this is Atlantis. Egypt is Atlantis. And people saying, well, Sumeria is the lost land. And, if you get a map that was used by the ancients, you will see all of those lands that they don't tell us about today. And you can still go to them. They there. Most of us don't know anything about flight, map making. We don't know the geography other than what we were taught from the higher ups. You think they gave us the correct layout? No, all of the maps we use, and they laugh at them. The true maps of the earth are hidden in secrecy, and there are lands and continents. If you could see those maps, it will blow your mind. And they know they wouldn't be able to keep all of us over here as a slave race. They would lose billions of people. Think about it. It's people over here starving, believing that they're running out of resources. What if there are lands all around us where resources are abundant? You think we would stay? No, there will be great migrations. And that's what the space programs want to prevent. They ended the great age of exploration. All of the ancients spread it out and discovered resources and paradises. It was us who were trapped here in a cage made out of our own foolish beliefs by those last explorers who colonized the world. Basically, when they went on to discover new heavens and new continents and new worlds, they stopped anyone else from going behind them. It's like climbing up the ladder and then breaking it. What they did was when they went on beyond the ring to establish new worlds, they made a boundary here with military power and a boundary in your mind of being on a globe so that you would forget that there were worlds out there in the first place. But our ancestors knew that we didn't live on a ball. But when they balled up our ancestors' maps, the result was the globe that you believe in, and that is the matrix that's hiding all of the secret lands we long to go to, all of the mythological paradises we read about. They are real. It's your belief that's making them fake. A lot of the ancestors went on to some of those lands while we remain here stuck in our ignorance. The Pygmy knew where they come from, and their land was always written on this map. Have you ever been to the North Pole? So why do you believe what scientists tell you about it? If we got on a ship and went to the North Pole, I believe we'll see just what the ancients say. Beautiful lands, continents you never heard of, civilizations you never thought exist. And by the time you make it to those 4 continents, you would already be in awe. So this earth is so huge. According to the ancients, it's an infinite plane. According to the Pygmy, when you travel toward the North Pole, you discover continents that they don't have on our maps. You discover the lands that the Pygmies inhabited. You can see all of these places in these old maps. But the more time passed, the more they dumb us down and the more they redo the maps. That's what the whole global deception is about, redoing the maps, telling you that all of the additional land is floating in a vacuum above your head in something called space. But all of the space that the space programs are hiding is all around you, resources and land. And the Pygmies knew about it, and the Dogon knew about it, and many more tribes know about it. And I do believe that they still visit these lands because they're off grid, they're off map. When I say off map, I mean they don't have the maps we have. They don't live in our way of thinking in our world. I can imagine how they would look at us talking about some of these places like myths when they actually are going to these places. So there's a disconnect between us and these ancient tribes in the jungle. And the only connection we have with those tribes are American or Western world anthropologists who are taking the trips to talk to these tribes. And these tribes are telling these guys some very profound information. But they're not coming back relaying the truth to us. They have to keep us stuck on a global deception. So they come back and tell us that these ancient tribes believe in the globe just like Copernicus, and that these ancient tribes believe in gravity just like Isaac Newton. But it don't make sense. We know that they were all flat earthers. So this is just an intro. It was a lot of things we need to touch before we go deeper. In the second part, we're going to be going into the grand deception talking about the agents that hid the ancient truth from us. And we're going to be getting into some of these Masonic anthropologists that have flew over and corrupted the science, flying back telling us, hey, this is what the Dogon said. They said that we come from Sirius A, Sirius B. That's a lie. The Dogon said we come from the North Pole. And I'm going to be proving why most of us believe that the Dogon are globalists. If the Dogon were globalists, they would also have the out of Africa theory. But the Dogon said that they come from the lands in the north, and I just showed you those lands. You can't find those lands on a globe. So the Dogon are flat earthers, and we'll be proving that without a shadow of the doubt in the second part. We'll also be exposing those Freemasonic agents that are keeping us detached from this great information that our brothers and sisters have been passing down in these tribes for eons. We've been detached from it. And in the second part of this, like I said, I'm going to be exposing all of the deception, showing you who detached us, how we were detached, and I'm going to be going into details so that you will know the history of this deception. And then, just like I promised, we'll be getting into the true teachings of the Dogon and their mother goddess Amma. We'll be talking about the cosmic egg, or Amma's egg, and we'll be looking at a lot of beautiful symbolism that's going to blow you guys away, syncing it together. This first part is just an introduction. If you really want to dive deep, you need to join me for part 2, because there's so much more. And we're not deep in the rabbit hole. We're still on the surface. So I urge you all to continue with me and look forward for part 2 so we can go deeper. Remember, guys, stay encouraged, stay inspired, always question, continue to be open-minded. It's your brother Sanchez. As always, new uploads every Thursday. Peace and much love.